these things take time, right? Money has to get wired internationally, has to go through the lawyer, then it has to come to me, yada, yada. It wasn't for some time that I got the first bunch of money in my bank account.
We're talking life-changing money, right? Like, I know you can't say probably what it is, but
we're talking millions.
All right, guys. So today we've got the first in what Tom and I are very excited about. We're interviewing Ben, who is a successful Amazon seller. A few years ago, he exited a brand in the sports and fitness niche called Beastgear. It's going to be the first in what we hope is a long line of interviews with successful entrepreneurs, and super excited to kick it off. So welcome to the channel, Ben. Welcome to the first in the series. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here. Good to be numero uno.
Yeah. What an honor.
We're starting high, mate. We're starting as we mean to go on. We want to come in with a megastar of the Amazon space.
It's all downhill.
I don't know about that. We were just discussing before we went live that I've got like 150 Twitter followers, so I definitely don't know about megastar. But maybe after this show, I'll have 153 or something.
Hey, we're growing steadily. This is evergreen content. Is the beauty of YouTube, isn't it? But we'll plug all your stuff for sure. Like as the interview goes on. I mean, just to kick it off, Ben, could you just like tell our followers, a bit about you, then your brief backstory.
Yeah, I'll kind of start at the end and then kind of rewind a bit just to give a bit of context. So as Alex was saying, I sold a fitness brand. I sold that in 2019, right before the explosion in mergers and acquisitions in e-commerce. And that's what everyone's talking about at the moment is exits, because buying and selling e-commerce businesses has become a thing. You know, if you said to the bank in the past, I want to buy an e-commerce business, they'd look at you like you had two heads, because they didn't believe, unless it had, a roof and walls, they didn't believe it was a big boy grown up business, but now they do. But to go back to the start, I got into e-commerce in 2016. My background before that is science. I'm an ecologist originally, a marine ecologist. I'm a dolphin geek. I was the token tree hugger in the room telling oil and gas executives that they couldn't throw certain chemicals in the sea. And generally speaking, I enjoyed my job. I didn't know that I had an entrepreneurial spark inside me, but I got sick. I had to take quite a lot of time off work while I recovered from a heart condition. I'm fine now. But I couldn't do my fitness hobbies, and I needed something to do. So I started a fitness brand. And at this point, I knew nothing about e-commerce. I just knew I needed to have somewhere to sell my stuff. I knew I would sell it on my own website, but I also discovered that third-party selling on Amazon was a thing, which I didn't know at the time. It turned out I was quite good at that. And I quit my job. I scaled the business up, and I began to hear whispers in early 2019 that selling in an e-commerce brand was a thing, was achievable, was possible, because money was coming into the space specifically to acquire e-commerce brands. And it was the right time for my family and I to do that. And so we were doing about 4 million quid, or probably about $6 million in sales at the time. And in late 2019, the sale went through. I sold it through a broker who could have been better. And that experience led me to what I'm doing now, which is I'm still building brands because I love it, and I now know how to make a brand into something valuable that I can sell. But I'm now running a brokerage called Ecom Brokers, based on that. It's the classic entrepreneurial thing, isn't it? You have an experience and you see a gap to make it better, so you go and do that. And that's kind of that's the background, and that's a very quick summary of what I've done and what I'm doing now.
Amazing. So should we take it back then, right? So what year was this when was it around 2018, 2019? You said when you first started.
2016.
2016. Okay.
2016. Yeah. I remember I had the idea in February 2016, and I sold my first product to a stranger on the internet, which sounds a bit dodgy.
On the dark web or on a legit?
On Amazon. Yeah, definitely on Amazon. In June 2016. And it was funny because you got to, some people listening won't know what I'm talking about. So I'll give you the context. Back in the day, you could, within the rules, you could get family and friends to buy your stuff and leave you a great review, provided they'd written in the review, I left this review in exchange for a free product or whatever it was, right? They had to put a little disclaimer. And I remember I would come home from work, and or my wife would get home from her work, and I'd say, I sold 3 skipping ropes today. And she'd say, and how many of those were real customers and how many of those were people you knew? And I said, oh, they were all people I knew. And then the next day she'd come and I'd say, I sold 5 skipping ropes today. And she'd say, how many were real customers and how many were people you knew? And I'd say, oh, they were all people I knew. Eventually we got to a point where it was like,
run out of friends, did you?
I remember I got to a day where I was like, I sold 15 ropes today. And she was like, and how many were real people or real customers and how many people you knew? And I said, they were all real customers. And I just remember that was when I knew I'm onto something here. But anyway, to answer your question, yeah, it was 2016.
Okay. And okay.
Did you, before that, did you I know you mentioned you were in a scientist beforehand, but when you were growing up, did you have any kind of entrepreneurial experience, like studying stuff at school or anything like
that? No. There's one vague memory that's coming back to me actually in primary school. I remember, I don't know why it's coming back to me. I took a bunch of marbles, covered them, surrounded them in blue tack, which for any Americans listening is like a tacky, maybe you have blue tack, I don't know, a tacky thing that you use to stick posters to the wall. Covered them in blue tack and then painted them.
I think it's just called tack, yeah.
Tack. And then painted them and sold them to other kids at school. And then the next day they all came back to me and said, hang on, these are just marbles you've covered in blue tack and painted. You ripped me off. I want my money back. So that was my only failed business venture at the age of about 6. Until my late 20s when I started Beastgear. Yeah, I didn't know I had an entrepreneurial spark inside me, and I discovered it, and now I feel like I've got to burn through that.
It's really interesting in this. You hear like some people are the classic, like actually it's kind of like me and Alex, to be honest. Like, I'm one end of the spectrum where I was the kid at school that sold everything, and then Alex I don't think was that way at all. But then we both met in our 20s and we were both really aligned with where we were at that point with being entrepreneurial and still kind of, I don't think there's any like correct path to being one. I think it's just a case of you strike while the iron's hot when you get the kind of motivation.
Totally. Yeah. It's weird, isn't it? It's like you hear the interviews, the classic interviews with, I don't know, Branson or Dyson or Musk. And it's all like, I was a born entrepreneur. It's in my veins, And I just absolutely wasn't that way at all. It wasn't something I discovered until circumstances funneled me down that route. Because I didn't even really start it with aspirations to grow it into something big or to completely change my career. It was a hobby to give me something to do that might earn me some extra pocket money if I was lucky. But as I was going through the process, I A, began to enjoy it, and B, realized I was actually very good at it.
So that was the motivation then. So whilst you were working full time, it wasn't, I want some extra cash or, I want to quit my job. It was just purely something to do.
Well, originally I started when I was signed off work because I was pretty sick. And then I got back to work and I was building the business in the evenings and weekends and really discovering a passion for it. And, the more it became successful and the more that flywheel began to move, the more you enjoy it, right? Success makes you enjoy it more. You're not going to enjoy it if it's a struggle or if it's not going well. And that began to chip away and reveal this entrepreneurial side to me that I didn't know existed. And now I feel like I have this entrepreneurial spark that I need to burn through. And I don't know how long that will take. 10 years? Who knows?
I don't think it ever stops, does it? I think once you get bitten with that bug of enjoying that process, I don't. For me personally, I don't think it'll ever.
Builders build. They say, don't they? There's a phrase I keep reading nowadays.
Yeah. I think it would be very boring now to do something that doesn't involve something, at least some sort of creating of something entrepreneurial.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's very, very creative. In a traditional sort of job or role or whatever, you're often kind of capped in what you do on a daily basis. And I think for me personally, it's like the freedom side of it and you get to be creative in so many different ways and non-traditional ways as well, I think. So,
I mean, I quite liked my job, but I was in quite a stuffy industry that still does need to get disrupted. And I was able to kind of do my own disruption on the side. And all the classic stuff that you hear about being your own boss and that freedom is true. And it's that sense of satisfaction that you're not doing it for anyone else. You're not doing it for faceless shareholders. You're doing it for yourself and your family. And that, at the end of the day, that's going to give you more get up and go than a paycheck from a faceless organization.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. So going on to the brand then. So Beastgear, which anyone looks now, it's still on Amazon UK. I had to actually look at it today, and it's still doing super well on there. That was so you were into sport, right? You said so. That was a passion of yours. And was it a case of you saw a gap in the market, or was it a case of you just loved it so much you wanted to be a part of that industry?
A few years before I started the brand, before I had the idea to start the brand, and before I got ill and needed something to do, I'd been training with some buddies. We were at CrossFit, and I'm afraid I used to be one of those. And
surprised you're not wearing the t-shirt.
At the end of the session, somebody said, "Oh, we beasted it today," and I remember thinking, "We beasted it, Beastgear. That'd be a cool name for a fitness brand." And I parked it somewhere in the back of my mind and forgot all about it. It was then a couple of years after that when I was ill, tidying out my gym kit, feeling pretty sorry for myself, looking at the kit, and I thought, well, I could do a better job of that. And then I thought, oh yeah, I had that cool idea for a fitness brand, Beastgear. Well, why don't I do that? But I had no idea where to start. So it was, I knew I needed a project. I knew that I could improve on the kit that I had and make it better. And I knew that I was interested in fitness. And so I thought I would build a fitness brand. I'm still brand first. I'm all about brand. To me, Amazon and any other place where you make sales online is just a sales channel. Nobody has an Amazon business except for Jeff Bezos. Hopefully what they have is a business, and Amazon is a sales channel. And so my idea was to create a fitness brand. And I didn't know the first thing about where to start, but because I have a scientific background, that gave me a bit of an advantage, not maybe as much as someone with a business background. But in science, we have a hypothesis, we test the hypothesis, we observe the results, we get the data, we analyze it, and then we tweak it and go again. And it was that process, learning by doing. It was a bit more sophisticated than trial and error because there was almost a scientific aspect, but it was a bit like trial and error. It was that learning by doing process that took me down the path.
So at this time, when you were doing this sort of like learn by trial and error, was there the tools that are available nowadays? So was it a case of like Jungle Scout and Helium 10, or were you kind of doing this manually?
Jungle Scout existed. Don't think Helium 10 existed, but actually I found all these tools to be a distraction. Let me tell you why. See, I nearly fell into the trap that a lot of people fall into now. And it's this. I remember I used to listen to the Amazing Seller podcast with Scott Volker. I love Scott Volker, right? Gave me a lot of inspiration at the start. He doesn't have that podcast anymore. He's got a different one now. I think it's called Rock Your Brand. Anyway. And despite how much I like him, one of the things that he and others used to teach back in the day, and I don't really blame them for this because this was what the opportunity was at the time, was use tools like Jungle Scout to find a product or find a gap on Amazon and go make some money, right? It was all about shovels to the gold rush. It was all about spotting the opportunity on Amazon, which for me is short-sighted and isn't what any of us should be doing. We should be building a brand which solves problems for a particular group of people by providing solutions to those problems in the form of products. And I remember I placed my first order with my supplier, which was for a skipping rope, which I called the Beast rope. And I went through a scientific process of developing it. I found suppliers, I got their off-the-shelf products, and I said, I like this bit, I don't like that bit. Can we tweak this? Can we put these together? And I tested them, and I gave them to buddies down the gym to test, and I gave them to some professional boxers to test. And then I listened, and I placed my first order after I was happy with what I'd settled on. And then I listened to an episode of the podcast. And at the end of the episode, I thought, oh no, I've picked a dud product. And this is going to be a disaster. You know, I've picked a dud because I fell into the trap of thinking that it was about picking a product and finding a gap and finding a, you know, I made the mistake of thinking it was all about hacks, right? And there are still gurus teaching this nonsense now. And it's not a thing. It's a fake thing that they've invented to keep themselves in a job. I don't lump Scott Volker into that, by the way. I really like Scott Volker. But there are others who talk about finding a product on Amazon. And that is just not a thing. And I remember I went on the Amazing Seller website, and you could leave a voice memo to appear to ask your question on the next episode. And I left a voice message saying, I'm really worried I've picked a dud. What should I do? And I think he answered my question a bit later saying, you know, we'll just sell through the inventory and use the capital to go again. Don't worry about it too much. Fortunately, by the time the episode aired, my product had landed and it was going great guns, and I needn't have worried, because it wasn't about picking a product. It was about creating a product which solves a problem for a particular group of people. And so coming back to your point about what tools existed, I found those tools to be a total distraction. Jungle Scout and all the others were solving a problem that in my view at the time didn't really exist. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that Jungle Scout, Helium 10 and other tools have developed a long way since then to being a suite of tools which actually do solve problems. For instance, Helium 10 solves problems for Amazon sellers by giving them the ability to optimize listings and all sorts of things. But at the time, I found that those tools were just another shovel to the gold rush hack, which was entirely missing the point. And I've been on a bit of a ramble.
No, good. What was your niche? Like, was it? I mean, nowadays, I imagine it's way more competitive. I actually noticed there's a brand that's called Gear Beast that maybe ripped you off, I think, rich idea. But like, was it considered then? Like, would you look at it as a saturated niche? I mean, obviously, sport and fitness is like unbelievably popular on Amazon. So was it super competitive, or were you not really worried about that because you knew your product was real quality?
I think that some of the early courses like ASM and others had come, because I didn't pay attention to any of that. I didn't even know they existed, right? Because when I started developing my first product, I didn't even have anywhere to sell it, right? I was building a brand. I didn't know that third-party selling on Amazon was a thing. So I only came across some of this stuff later. And I think ASM had come out in, I don't know, 2014 or 15 or something. And so there was a lot of people who'd been through these courses who were just selling off-the-shelf generic rubbish on Amazon who believed that if you stick a logo on something that you have a brand. So as soon as I actually developed a real sports brand by a sports person for sports people, and I just happened to make that available on Amazon, I absolutely crushed it. And so Beastgear became possibly the biggest fitness brand on Amazon UK. And then it was pretty straightforward to, I mean, in hindsight, it's straightforward. At the time, obviously, there's all the hoops you have to jump through, but to expand that to Europe. And in actual fact, Amazon UK is more saturated than the US when you think about the number of sellers,
the ratio
per head of population.
Yeah, this is one thing that Tom and I we've discussed this a lot, and you see a lot of the UK gurus, and they specifically teach their students to go into the UK for it, and it's one thing that I did that initially before I started working with Tom, and then as soon as we went to the US, we were like, this made no sense really that we were sticking to specifically to the UK. So obviously you started in the UK.
Yeah, I did.
And then you moved into Europe. Did you ever try to go to the US at all, or how did?
I very nearly did, but I decided. So I'll tell you why I started in the UK. Again, because I was building a brand in the UK, it made sense to me to sell in the UK. I didn't at the time, and with the benefit of hindsight, I really wish I had. I didn't at the time think about, because it wasn't Amazon first. Amazon was just a sales channel, right? So it made sense to me to launch in the UK. And I am glad I did, because it allowed me to dip my toe in the water and feel quite secure and close to everything that was going on. I didn't go into the US. I went UK, pan-EU. Well, no, that's a lie. UK, European Fulfilled Network, pan-EU, Amazon Australia, Amazon Middle East, and then the business was acquired in late 2019. And only now, in early 2022, have they just started to launch a few products on Amazon in the US.
Wow, okay. And did you, when you were scaling up around Europe, was that a plan you laid out kind of 12 months in advance, or were you kind of taking try with your first couple of strong products first, and did you kind of extend the whole line out, or was it like testing the waters in each one?
I can't take as much credit as that, I'm afraid. It was quite serendipitous. The products were on Amazon UK, and because they were available in EFN, I think automatically, Amazon had created listings for the products on each of the European marketplaces, which at the time was France, Germany, Italy, and Spain. Poland and Sweden weren't around at the time. And the products were available in those marketplaces, but the customers couldn't get them on Prime because they were being shipped from the UK. But of course, we were still part of the EU. Even though the referendum was done in 2016, we didn't leave the EU for some time afterwards. Mm. And so then I started to get messages from Amazon employees encouraging me to join the Pan-EU program. And I was a bit skeptical at first, and I put it off and put it off and put it off. And eventually I did. And it was a real pain in the arse to join, right? This was before they'd made it easy. I had to register for VAT in France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Poland, and the Czech Republic. And registering for VAT in those countries was not straightforward. They didn't make it easy. I had to fill in forms for each country in native languages. Certain ones of them had to be notarized by something called a notary. The one for Spain was hilarious. The one for Spain, I don't know if you've come across this yourselves.
Yes,
maybe, I don't know.
Yes, we have. Like,
had to get sealed with like a wax seal, like something from medieval times. It was bonkers. I tell this to people on American podcasts and they don't believe me.
Let's give me some insight on that, Ben. A notary here their job is a notary. They're not another profession, and it's the thing. They get brought. It's like a family business, and they bring them in. So they're like people's sons come into the company. They've got amazing offices. You go there, you show them your company contract, they sign it, give it a stamp, and that's it. That's their job. And they're like, €1,000, please. Off you go. It's genius business, but it sucks.
And so I had to jump through all these hoops. And eventually got registered for VAT in each country, and eventually Pan-EU started. But what was fantastic was everyone else who was trying to go through this process, 90% of them said, "Oh, I can't be bothered. Too complicated, too difficult." What? A notary? What? No, not going to bother. I have to get this translated, but only by a translator who's got this certain qualification to prove that they can translate it. No, thanks. Can't be bothered. So when I jumped through all the hoops, I was like a hunter-gatherer from 50,000 years ago who just climbed over this mountain ridge into this lush, unexploited valley of, resources, right? Fruit everywhere. My sales doubled overnight because suddenly Mario in Milan could get my product the next day. Franz in Frankfurt could get my product the next day. Anyone in any part of Europe pretty much could get my product the next day. And so my sales almost doubled overnight. And it was amazing.
And how did you keep up with that growth, like financially? Did you take any loans out, or did you?
I was fortunate in two ways. One, I had excellent margins. Two, I had negotiated very good terms with my suppliers. Three, Amazon started to offer me loans. This was around about the time that Amazon started to offer loans. Amazon are genius, right? They know that to scale my business, I need money. They also know that I can afford to pay back because they can see my sales data. They offered me loans at ridiculously low rates, and I took them. And that helped me to scale. And so that's why I never needed any external capital other than across the whole lifetime of the business. I think I borrowed about 10 grand from my dad, which I paid back. And apart from that, it was the Bank of Bezos.
Nice.
And were they getting like an incrementally larger and larger and larger
Yeah,
loans? Like, when
it is
you
nuts.
stop after 2019 exit, how long up until the exit were you taking the loans?
You mean how long before?
Yeah, like when did you kind of stop getting the need for them, I guess, or did you continue to take them?
Yeah, I didn't have any outstanding loans when I sold the business. I probably took 3 or 4. I remember. I think the first one was about 36 grand, and the last one was probably about 100 grand.
Wow.
But the reason I need to give you the context, so I had however many products I had, 15 or more, 15 to 20 products by the time I sold the business. The first order I placed was for the original skipping rope called the Beast rope, and it was for 500 skipping ropes. The last order I placed for that product, and bearing in mind there were another 17, 18, 19 products as well. The last order I placed for that product before I sold the business was 250,000 skipping ropes.
Jeez.
So I needed cash.
Yeah.
Right? But you got to remember as well is that things were different then. And every day I could press the button in my Amazon Seller Central account to get paid.
Really?
We got daily disbursements.
I remember,
You don't get that anymore unless you have a really old account. Right. Kind of still wish I had that account, but never mind. Yeah.
Every 2 weeks now is a bit. It can be a long 2 weeks at times, can't it?
Yeah.
So you never really faced any cash flow issues then? That wasn't really like a challenge to your growth?
There were a few times where I was like, I need some cash, but there was always a way. It was always always Amazon, or I could put some of my own money in, or I could talk nicely to a supplier who I'd had a great relationship with and say, look, can we defer this by, I knew that I'd get paid a certain amount in a few days. So I was like, can we put this off? It's always cool. So I never ran into some of the real nightmare challenges that people run into.
So aside from that then, what as you were scaling this, what would you say were like the biggest challenges that you faced outside of finances?
There's a few. I had built an excellent brand and I was getting ripped off a lot. In several ways. There was black hatters jumping on my listing, either selling fakes or fresh air. So there was a few cons going on. They would jump on my listing with a fulfilled by merchant listing, and the customer would order it and nothing would ever arrive. Or they would jump on my listing, and this was the really bad one, with a fulfilled by Amazon listing, and the customer would order it and a really cheap fake version of my product would arrive. That was really terrible. Damn. And so eventually I was actually able to get my brand gated to get rid of these black hatters. So that was a challenge. Then there were just the ripoffs who would create a brand very, very similar to mine. I mean, there wasn't a brand. It was stuff on Amazon with a name
The Gear Beast. The Gear Beast.
Gear Beast, Fit Beast, logos and fonts incredibly similar to mine. But with no brand identity, no real quality, no proper product development, all just off-the-shelf rubbish, and no customer experience. They weren't brands. They were just selling stuff on Amazon and trying to steal my keyword traffic, essentially. It's difficult to get rid of those guys because technically speaking, sometimes they are just the right side of the intellectual property line, if you like. And then there are some more serious intellectual property disputes. So I'll tell you about one. I created a product called Beast Grips. You can go find it. I designed it, or rather I created a crappy idea for a design and worked with a professional product designer to design it. It is a thick bar adapter for barbells and dumbbells. And that product is design registered, which is very similar to what in the US they call a design patent. It protects the design. It protects how the product looks, essentially, the appearance of the product. And that product is designed to make barbell and dumbbell exercises more difficult. It's also designed to be better than the product that had existed for a long, long time before that from another brand, which had been unchallenged in the industry for a long time. And was frankly a ripoff, because I knew how much they were sourcing it for, more or less, and I knew what they were charging customers. And it wasn't a great product. My product was better, And as a result of my product being better, it started to get traction and really, really do very well. We're talking, this is around 2017, 18. And this other brand, which was owned by an enormous North American organization, got quite upset that my product was being sold for less than theirs, was better than theirs, and outselling theirs. And so they concocted a phony allegation against me. They accused me of infringing on their patent. And they knew that I wasn't. They knew my product wasn't. To make my life incredibly difficult, they conducted all their business, despite being a North American organization, they conducted it all in German through German lawyers. Because they could do it in any country they chose in which I was selling, and they were also selling. So they thought, well, we'll make his life really difficult. We'll do it in German. We know this is one guy on a laptop in his spare room. And you could tell from how they were behaving that they had experience. They were quite experienced at coming down on small, independent businesses like a ton of bricks and scaring the crap out of them. And so I got these letters saying I had to stop selling or they're going to sue the pants off me. Amazon suspended my product. So they received this allegation, and rather than checking the facts of the allegation, they just suspended my product. And it was then up to me to demonstrate that I wasn't infringing on their patents. And so I went back to the attorney who'd registered the design of my products and said, well, what do we do? And we took our time. We took about 2-3 weeks to figure it all out. But eventually we discovered several things. We knew I wasn't infringing on their patent, but we also discovered that they had bought the brand from an entrepreneur not too dissimilar from me several years before. But that entrepreneur, when he had designed the product, had made the mistake of doing it on the cheap. And the drawings for his patent, or for their patent, were actually not very good. And actually were not similar enough to their physical product, such that their patent didn't even protect their own product. Wow. So my attorney went back and said, A, Beastgear's product is not infringing on your patent. B, Beastgear's product is protected by its own design registration. And C, actually, if you notice this, this, and this, you'll see that your patent actually is not similar enough to your product to protect it. And if you don't go away and leave Ben alone and retract your suspension, the suspension of the product on Amazon, we're going to go to the intellectual property courts and have your patent invalidated. And they knew if we did that, that would completely open the market up and they'd be completely screwed. So they could either coexist with me, right, or the market would be completely diluted.
I hope you give that attorney a nice bonus.
Yeah.
That attorney did a great job, no?
She did. She's phenomenal. If anyone needs a really good intellectual property attorney on patents and design registrations, hit me up. I'll introduce you. And so they went away. The product was reinstated. I tried to sue them for the sales I lost on Amazon and my legal fees. I never heard from them again, so that was unsuccessful. But at the end of the day, I won, and my product went on to become, one of the leaders. They decided to compete with me on price because there's nothing else that they could do. And that was kind of a David versus Goliath story. And that was really the biggest challenge I think I faced in the whole time of the business, because it was scary. You're on your own. You're a small business. I'd gone full time by this point. I was trying to pay my mortgage. I promised my wife that this would work. And these guys come along. And we're talking about big amounts of money and big, scary consequences.
Yeah.
And so the moral of the story is get your intellectual property stuff sorted early. Straight out of the bat. Not just trademarks, but patents, design registrations, all that good stuff.
I think we've seen, it's very common now, anyone we spoke to a few people who have had kind of 7-figure exits in the past year, and none of them have had this clean path to exit. There's always problems that come up, and it's just being an entrepreneur, putting out fires and kind of keeping going is perseverance is the main thing that
you might have heard that we have a visitor.
Let's have the guest on. Hello.
Give me a second.
Live TV, folks.
Yeah, we're leaving that in. Yeah. So with we want to get to your acquisition in a minute, but just before that, so you obviously made you made a product in a passion niche, and something that we hear a lot, and I think it's easier said than done, is people say, build a product that you are the customer base, or the customer base. And the way we view it, to be honest, is quite a lot of people are pretty similar. So like, people are like basic bitches, aren't they? Like, a lot of people have the same interests. So there's only so many products around hobbies that you can create, perhaps that are super common. So we're actually of the view you could become an expert in something you can become passionate about that niche. But I mean, what's your kind of view on that? Because obviously you built a product that you were using and in the game.
I think you're right. I think you can become passionate about something within reason. If you have absolutely no interest in knitting, and there is no conceivable way in which you're going to become passionate about knitting, I would argue that it's not a good idea to start a knitting brand unless you partner with somebody who is passionate about knitting. And you might be better at the nuts and bolts, right? You are the mechanic and they are the driver. They're the face. They perhaps have the vision. These are the outcomes. These are the problems we need to solve. This is who our customer base is, and this is what they're feeling, and this is what they want, and this is what they need. And then you are the more of the operator who creates that. And there's an author, Gino Wickman, wrote a book called Rocket Fuel, which is a bit about how you can partner in that way. There's another great book called Who Not How by Dan Sullivan about partnering. And that's where I think it can work, where you can be involved in a business that you're not necessarily passionate about yourself, but somebody in the organization needs to be, in my opinion.
That makes sense. I think one of the challenges that we face with our own brands is kind of related to that. So our biggest competitor, they started it out of that passion, and they have their own place where they can develop their products. And as Tom and I have matured in our own Amazon sort of journey and experience, we have kind of started to realize that it does help massively if you have that opportunity to be able to test the products yourself, and you can be involved in it. And that kind of leads me to my next question about the product development. So obviously you've had these problems with the IP infringement and stuff. So all of the products that you developed, was it absolutely essential that everything you had the IP protection? Was it 100% of the product range, or was it kind of what you could?
No, there are products, for instance, if we go back to the first brand, Beastgear, there are products that are undeniably pretty generic, because there's only so far you can take something. For instance, we sold, one of our best sellers was a pair of weightlifting straps, which differed from traditional weightlifting straps in that they had some special gel grips on them to help grip your hands better. But apart from that, there's nothing really different, and there's tons of them available. What was good about them is that we made sure that they were made out of the highest quality materials. So I think if you're going to sell a product that is relatively generic, what you just have to do is make sure, if it's been innovated as far as it can be innovated, right? You can't really take it any further. You just have to make sure then that everything about it, the quality, the strength, the way it performs, is as good as is possible. And you're constantly working with your manufacturers to seek ways to make that better. Right? So a pair of weightlifting straps, you can't really innovate on that, but what you could do is constantly ensure that you're keeping up to date with the latest textiles and technology in textiles to make sure that they're being made out of the best stuff, for example. Mm-hmm. So some of our products were more or less off the shelf in that way, but I think if you can innovate to begin with and build a brand that is known for being a little bit more innovative and not necessarily just purely off the shelf, once you have people who are fans of your brand, then you can add the more generic stuff that they'll just buy. So to use a sports example, MyProtein, they started out making really good protein supplements. Now, if you go on their website, you can buy stuff to use in the gym. You can buy weightlifting straps. Nobody goes out saying, I want to buy a pair of MyProtein weightlifting straps, but if they're a fan of MyProtein, so then they're like, oh, well, I'll get their weightlifting straps. With Beastgear, we created really good skipping ropes, which were not the same as anything else that was out there. And then people were like, okay, I like that stuff, so now I'll buy their weightlifting straps, which are more or less the same as everything else, but I know they're going to be good quality. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like a brand. It's like trusting a brand, isn't it? That's part of the power of it. Exactly. I think what we've seen is, even since we've been in this space. So I think Alex was first on Amazon 2018, 2019. I came in full time 2020, and even since then, like the private label space has gone from. I think it used to very much be most people would go on Alibaba, slap their logo on a product and throw it up, and that was it really. And now in 2022, I mean, the next brand that Alex and I are working on, it's all custom. Everything's going to be custom designed. It's going to be a unique product that nobody else has, and that feels like the next iteration of Amazon where we're at now. But alongside kind of like you mentioned there, you can sprinkle in kind of generic products that are strong sellers, but you can out brand people and you can out Amazon people. Then it's a great kind of winning combination for the next couple of years, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And I think you hit the nail on the head with the phrase there, out brand people, right? Because there are still people out there that are falling for the guru stuff of pick a product, rather than build a brand. For instance, I'm working on a new brand. It's a parent and baby brand, and I've spent upwards of 20 grand on developing the first product, because unfortunately, after having an exit under my belt, I can do that. So it's going to be a completely unique product that's completely uniquely designed. But after we have outbranded everyone and built this reputation, then we may well add more generic products, because, well, why would we not? People will buy them from us.
Yeah. So with that, I mean, just leading on to the sale then. So you sold, was it kind of 3 years pretty much to scale up and have an exit, right?
About 3.5, yeah.
So fairly quick. I mean, do you think with your knowledge now, with the next brand, is the plan kind of to do that at a higher speed and get another exit under your belt?
I mean, the plan is always to build to sell. We haven't even started selling the products yet on this. I'm working on several brands, but on this particular one that I just mentioned, the parent and baby brand, we probably won't be selling to the general public till late summer. It depends on how much traction we get. I would imagine we'll sell the brand between, and I'm afraid this is going to be quite broad, between 2 and 5 years after starting.
Yeah. Depending on success, yeah. But I mean, it's still, in traditional sense, that's still very fast, I think.
That's pretty quick.
Yeah, I think even since we came into the space, when we first started out, it was like, make a side income, maybe like a couple of extra grand each a month. And then very quickly, with all the money that flooded into aggregators, we were like, whoa, this is change our goal completely. We're going to go 7 figures here, like this. And now that's kind of our main goal. I mean, to circle back around then. So when you sold your business, you kind of were early on, right? You were early in the aggregator bubble.
Yeah, I mean, so I can talk about some of this because the organization that bought my brand is called Thrasio, and I can say that because they use me in their PR. So I'm not breaching any NDAs.
Oh, nice.
I believe my brand was their first UK acquisition, and that was in late 2019. They came to exist in September 2018. And they were the second ever aggregator. The first one was called 101 Commerce, which was actually acquired very early on themselves. But they were the first one to really take this model mainstream. They formed in September 2018. I received interest from them in September 2019, and the deal was done at the end of October 2019, right before this explosion in mergers and acquisitions. And now what we've seen is not only have we seen hundreds of other organizations raise private equity, raise debt, raise capital to emulate what they're doing to varying degrees of success. We are now seeing more traditional big boy private equity who've been running brands for decades come into the space. They've allowed it to sit for a couple of years, let the canary go down the coal mine, and now they're coming in. And actually they're going to blow the aggregators away. Many of the aggregators are just failing because they don't know how to operate brands. They know how to raise money, but they know diddly squat about e-commerce. Private equity does know about operating brands. They don't necessarily know about all the nitty gritty of e-commerce, but they'll get there, right? And that is going to be incredibly interesting and only good for sellers, because it's not going to be about when the aggregators first came in, they would acquire any old crap. They would acquire an Amazon account selling a mishmash of absolute rubbish. It wasn't about brand. It was about cash flow. It was cash flow arbitrage. They wanted to buy an Amazon account for a low multiple, 3, put it in their portfolio and sell it on for more. It was arbitrage. Now they're only going to buy something that's a legitimate brand. And what that also means is that as private equity comes in, it's not going to be about selling your Amazon business, and nobody has an Amazon business, to an aggregator. It's about selling your consumer product brand to a buyer, whoever that buyer might be. More mature private equity, aggregator, private individual or group of private individuals, family office, competitor, whoever it might be. And so the brand that I'm building now, the parent and baby one, that is not going to, I highly doubt that will be acquired by an aggregator. I think that will be acquired by a much, much larger parent and baby brand or private equity fund that operates high-end brands. And so once you get your aim initially might be to exit to an aggregator and then get some money under your belt, build a new brand that's more of a consumer goods brand that you're going to exit to the big boys later on.
I listened to an interview recently and they were saying one of the key differences between the private equity and the aggregators was essentially that the aggregators, like you say, they're very focused on the Amazon, but for private equity, they're looking very much exactly like you said, they're looking for that bigger brand, but they're also, it's actually a negative for them if you're only existing on Amazon because the sort of the risk on their side of it only being on one channel. Is that something do you have that sort of similar feeling with the difference between aggregators and equity?
I did, but it's changed. And to some extent I still do, but it's very quickly moving. It's changing because the aggregators are getting more sophisticated for a couple of reasons. One, they're just getting better. They're getting more capable. But two is they have to, because the ones who aren't capable are either dying or being acquired themselves by larger aggregators, or they're being forced to by their investors. Because when this first started, the business model was Amazon is growing at a ridiculous rate. Give us your money. We'll roll up these e-commerce brands and sell them on for higher multiple. We can't fail. Very quickly, they've discovered, they can fail. Because actually, they didn't give us enough credit. They didn't give Alex or Tom or Ben or anyone else running an e-commerce business enough credit for what we do on our laptop in our spare room. They didn't know it was actually hard work. It's not just slapping something on Amazon. It's a real business and it's hard. And they realized that we don't know how to operate these things because we can't hire the talent. And the reason they can't hire the talent is the talent doesn't want a job. The talent wants to build their own brand and then sell it. And so the investors are now only investing in aggregators who have demonstrated they have some decent operational capability. And this is why the aggregators are now being a bit more sophisticated than, the business has to be doing at least 80% on Amazon. They are actually saying, okay, we will be open to a business that is a legit brand selling through its own D2C website, also with wholesale relationships with retailers, also selling on, I don't know, Faire or Walmart or Etsy or whatever it might be. And so the aggregators are becoming more akin to what private equity looks like.
Right. Just like the market's maturing at
It's maturing,
stage,
and this is only going to be good for sellers because multiples are going to continue to go up. I say good for sellers, good for smart sellers who are building a brand. Unfortunately, I have to give people bad news almost every day. They come to us at ecom brokers and they say, I want to sell my business. Can you take a look? And I take a look and I say, I either have to tell them it's worth almost nothing or nothing at all because it's not sellable.
Yeah.
They say, yeah, but we're doing this much profit. And I say, yeah, you're doing that much profit, but it's just an Amazon account selling a variety of stuff. Nobody wants to buy that. But the good news is that for the people that are building a brand, buyers who see that are willing to pay more for it. So multiples are going up. Now you'll hear on various podcasts, you'll hear aggregators telling you multiples are stabilizing or multiples are going down or multiples will stabilize at 3.5x. Bullshit. They just want to take your business from you for as little as they possibly can.
Because I think I think I saw you comment. Yeah, it was on, people were throwing around these numbers of these multiples, and I think you came in at what, I can't remember. It might have been on Twitter or somewhere, and you came in and you said, I think you just said bullshit. Yeah, that's not. So is that what it is? They're trying to.
Well, there's two types of bullshit. There's aggregator. Now, don't get me wrong. I talk to aggregators every day, and generally I like them. But business is business, and they want to take your business from you for as little as they can. That's their model, right? It's arbitrage. Fair enough. So their bullshit is keep the multiples low. Then there's another type of bullshit, which is there are some gimmicky platforms out there for selling your business, and they basically say, sell your business with no broker fee, the buyer pays the fee, which is a lie, because the buyer does pay the fee, but the buyer's fee comes out of the same pot of money they would have paid you for your business. So you still end up paying, right? Yeah. And you end up dealing with them directly, and you get a terrible deal. And those platforms are spouting around on Twitter and everywhere else saying, oh, we just sold this business for, 8x. And that is not true, because it is 8x, but 8x of what? And if you actually dig deeper into what they've done, they've fudged the numbers, and they are not using the standard metrics that we use in mergers and acquisitions in e-commerce. So typically speaking, the average multiple in e-commerce is about 5. And I know that because that's the average of what we're doing, and that's the average of what our colleagues are doing in various digital investment banks and other brokerages as well. But these guys will say, oh, we just sold this business at 8x. But whereas what we would say as standard is we would report the multiple of the cash at closing. We wouldn't as standard include the inventory, and we wouldn't as standard include earn-out targets that have not yet been realized, which aren't going to get paid for the next 1 or 2 years, depending on whether the targets are even hit. Right. What these types of organizations are doing is they're including the inventory and including earn-out targets that haven't been realized to falsely inflate that number. And then they say, oh yeah, well, it was 8x, which is, right. Well, frankly, it's ethically wrong.
Yeah. I mean, have you seen then, because I think we definitely want to circle back to your new venture, like the econ brokerage, and it's super interesting in the way that you kind of change in the market with that. But people want to hear about your exit, and that's kind of like, that's the porn to Amazon sellers, isn't it? They want to know, they want to know the kind of dirty details. So that's the money shot. How was how was the day? What were the emotions? Did it last for a year, or was it like a couple of months?
It was insane.
Back to normal.
It was Halloween 2019, and the deal had to be done by midnight UK time, or it would slip. And the reason people listening were like, well, why does that matter? Why couldn't it be done the next morning? Right? Get up, go to sleep, have breakfast. Because when buyers are analyzing this stuff and they plug all the numbers through their system and they present it to their investment committee, who are representing their shareholders, they've modeled the whole thing based on specific dates. And if the date slips, then technically data is no longer true. Now, if it had slipped, we would have got the deal done eventually, but we really needed to not slip. Because after all, the organization, who I can name, Thrasio, who bought my business, especially at the time, were buying a lot of stuff, and they quite easily could have just moved on to the next business. So we needed to get this done by midnight. Now, bearing in mind this was their first UK acquisition, they weren't used to buying a UK entity. So at 20 to midnight, we had me, my lawyer, my accountant, them, their lawyers, their accountants, all on the phone, all just trying to get our heads around some VAT stuff. Everything was perfectly cool. Everything was legit. There was nothing to worry about. We were just trying to make sure that everything was, all the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted, and that everyone understood where we stood. And the deal was done at 4 minutes to midnight. So emotions were high, right? To answer your question. And nothing, and after that, right, nothing really happened. Like the next day, well, I ran my business. We went out to a local modest restaurant and had some burgers. I didn't have any more money yet. These things take time, right? Money has to get wired internationally, has to go through the lawyer, then it has to come to me, yada, yada. It wasn't for some time that I got the first bunch of money in my bank account.
We're talking life-changing money, right? Like, I know you can't say probably what it is, but
we're talking millions. And it was surreal. Surreal.
Did you have any like? Yeah, I was gonna say, did that last? How long did that last for? Because we've heard some people say they kind of felt a bit empty afterwards, but some people have obviously really enjoyed it and the next year off work. And
well, we were busy, right? We've got 2 kids. Our little girl was a baby. I think was my wife was on maternity. Yeah, Katie was on maternity leave at the time. So we were just busy. We're too busy to think about it, right? We're not particularly. We don't buy stuff, right? I bought myself a car, but we don't buy stuff. We don't have fancy stuff.
Well, fancy
most of my clothes are like 7 or 8 years old, right? Nothing has changed. The money has helped us to be more secure. I know that if anything terrible happens, we're going to be all right. We're planning to build a house. And some money is going into new stuff. But nothing has changed in who we are. We haven't won the Euro Millions. Yes, we won good money. We didn't win anything. I worked my ass off for several years and I sold my business. That's hilarious because actually shortly after we sold the business, or I sold the business, where I would often say, to Katie, listen, look, we haven't won the lottery here. We worked our asses off and we deserve this. Because it's a strange feeling when everything changes like that. But we didn't win the Euro Millions. We worked our asses off and got a decent amount of cash, which does change the situation. But it's not stratospheric, private jet type stuff, So not too much changes.
So is that the plan then with the next business? Is that is the goal? Are you shooting bigger then? What are you up to now?
No, I don't think it's like that. I think the next business is I spotted a gap. With our daughter, I spotted a gap in the parent and baby / parent and child space. And when this business is ready, I'm going to go completely different to what everyone else does. I'm going to tell everyone about it to the point that I'm going to do like screencasts showing the design drawings of the first product.
Amazing.
So when we're ready for that, I'll hit you up. Nice. I can't talk about it just yet. But it's not about selling it for tons of money. Yes, the plan is an exit because I don't want to do it forever, and it would be nice to take some money off the table in exchange for all my hard work. But it's not about trying to get loaded. It's about fulfilling something that you want to do, which is, in this case, solve a problem in that space and create something that you're proud of. That's what it's about. It's about creating something you're proud of.
Yeah.
Like some of the people that, for example, my background is environmental science, and I'm an environmental nerd. Some of the people that I most respect in the world, I have absolutely no idea how much or how little money they have. It's about what they have created and the difference they have made. And so, I spoke earlier about burning through an entrepreneurial spark, and I think that's something like 10 years. I've basically got a 10-year plan to be an entrepreneur. And then I'm going to get back into environmental conservation and apply my entrepreneurial spark to that, because I see a gap there. And the gap is there's a lot of really, really smart academics, but they don't get shit done. And they need a bit of entrepreneurial get shit done in order to get shit done.
You're going to merge the two worlds.
I hope so. I have no idea how that looks yet, but that doesn't matter because I believe in something called just-in-time learning. And you just figure it out as you go.
Love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've rambled on about a whole bunch of stuff.
No, it's amazing that we're loving listening to you. That's why we don't want to interrupt. But so to circle it back then, just to quickly cap it off with the exit, and then I think it'd be good to move on to you can tell we know you're working on this new brand and everything, and then you can tell us a bit more about what you've got planned aside from that and everything else that you're working on. But just to cap it off on the exit side, did you have like an earn out? Like, were you still involved in the business after the sale went through? What did it look like in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, so I can't get into too much detail, but yes, there was an earn out, which requires that the business hits certain targets, and then you get paid a certain amount when that happens. And I was involved in some product development for a period of time after the business was sold. So yes, I was still connected to the brand. Apart from anything else, I will always have a passion for that brand. I'm the guy that started it. But as time has gone on, it's over 2 years now since I sold it, I am less involved.
Okay.
My earnout's done, for example.
Right, nice. Was that was that kind of a worry of yours when you had the earnout agreement, or was it were you pretty confident they'd be able to sustain?
You can't think like that. You can't think like that. Part of what we do now with e-com brokers is that we make sure that the legal representation for the seller is really tight, so that the agreement protects the seller. So that if there's an earnout, for example, the seller will still get their payments if the new owner of the brand fails to operate it competently, such that the earnout targets are not hit. And there also needs to be like a ladder structure to the earnout targets. So if they don't hit target A, well, they're still going to get paid a certain amount. And if they don't hit target B, well, they'll still get paid a certain amount, if that makes sense, right? There also needs to be provisions in there because, Bob in supply chain at 4:30 on a Friday afternoon doesn't give a crap about your earnout. So you still need, we try to get into contracts that the seller still gets read-only access to anywhere they're selling the brand's products, so you can flag issues early. Or perhaps if they go out of stock on a certain product for a particular amount of time, you can adjust for that as if that hadn't happened, so the seller's earnout targets are protected. But what you have to do as well as making it as tight as possible, so that you can still have an earnout if you want one, so that you can enjoy some of the upside of the new growth that the brand's going to experience, hopefully, with the new resources behind it. You also have to come to terms with the fact, you just have to say to yourself, am I happy with what I'm getting up front? And if it all goes tits up, am I happy? And that is a question that you have to ask yourself when you're going through the process.
So this new, so the e-com brokerage, I know it's yourself, and it's you're partnered with an accountant,
Alison,
I believe.
yeah.
Alison, right. So there's expertise from both sides there. Is that something new in the space, and what's kind of the advantages of having somebody who's done it and somebody who knows accounts inside out together?
Yeah, so we basically put our skill set after I sold the first brand. The deal went through fine in the end because Alison kind of came to the rescue and tidied up a bit of a mess that the original broker had created. And at the end of the process, it was the classic entrepreneurial thing. There's a gap here, let's fill it. We wanted to create a better experience for e-commerce business owners, and actually as a happy side effect, also buyers, by putting our skill sets together. Me on the e-commerce side, understanding everything from product development to brand and email marketing and all sorts. And Alison with over 20 years mergers and acquisitions experience, and she's a specialist e-commerce accountant. And she's got a whole firm of accountants behind her to help us on the number crunching at e-com brokers. And so that gave us experience on all sides of the equation, which a lot of others don't. I'm still building brands now, so I still understand what it's like to hit your head off a brick wall every day because Amazon's done something stupid, or you can't get this latest Shopify plugin to work, or your ship is stuck somewhere, or whatever it might be. I get it. And Alison understands the mergers and acquisitions and the financial side. So putting those two things together really gives us an advantage. Where we also have an advantage is we're in the UK. So we're working with clients all over the world, but particularly for British and European business owners, because there's so much transatlantic stuff going on, that puts us in a really interesting spot as well.
And with the numbers side of things, because this is something that we didn't realize at the start, I guess, and something that, you learn a lot as you move on with business, but it's looking at the books, or how to read the books, basically, how to read them in the right way. So having like the seller discretionary earnings, or the EBITDA, and how a business is valued, which I think a lot of people that start out Amazon, they're just a solo entrepreneur, or they're kind of new to business. They don't understand that side of things. So is that something that you really emphasize importance on, and how to read the books and how it's actually going to get valued from day one?
Yeah, so we explain our process. In our process, we explain throughout the whole process what we're doing and why. And it's really helpful for sellers to understand what we're doing and why. But what sellers should also make sure that they don't fall into the trap of doing is, in doing their research, to think when they're thinking about selling, is they go and do a bunch of research and they say, oh, now I know what sales discretionary earnings is, and I know what EBITDA is, I can do it myself. when it comes to selling, a lot of really smart business owners suddenly become a bit dim. They're smart enough to use translators to translate their listings, and they're smart enough to work with intellectual property attorneys to sort out their trademarks and patents. And they're smart enough to work with professional photographers and videographers and accountants. And then for their most important, most valuable asset, which they will probably only get one exit in their entire life, they try to either do it themselves and they get taken to the cleaners, or they try to save a quick buck by using some gimmicky service that promises either extraordinarily low fees that sound too good to be true, or no fee, which sounds too good to be true. Whereas if they would only do what we've done in every other industry since the year dot, which is work with a brokerage to prepare their business for sale, help them with the exit strategy, position the business to a pool of the right buyers, and then execute the deal such that it is skewed in their favor as much as is possible, they'd be a lot better off. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I think with that as well, it makes it's similar to like the Amazon guru space is such like a murky area where like people, something that we really feel strongly about is if you're not, the fact that you still have a brand now, you still have you still got skin in the game, right? You're building a new brand right now. And that to us, if you had an exit, say 3 years ago, but you aren't currently doing anything, like Amazon moves on so fast, like how can you teach people up to date skills? And that's something that it kills us, man. Seeing people's advice, it's like, it's just totally shit sometimes.
Yeah. I know exactly who you're talking about. Yeah. I know exactly.
Naming no names.
Naming no names. Yeah. It pains me, and a lot of these people because particularly take mergers and acquisitions in e-commerce, right? It's so new that there's a lot of people, selling shovels to the gold rush, pulling the wool over people's eyes, and their moral compass is a bit skewed, and they're creating a false pretext for why they exist. They're creating a false problem and claiming to solve it. So for instance, don't pay a broker fee because it's a problem to pay a broker fee, apparently. That's not a problem that exists, because when you pay a good broker, emphasis on good, who does the work, you're not really paying them because it's a return on investment. If you didn't work with them, you'd get less.
Yeah.
So this whole idea of don't pay a broker, use our gimmick and get around it. Here's that word again, hack. Yeah. Here's a hack to get around paying a broker fee.
Pretty much any for me, anything where it's emphasizing a short-term win is generally not a good idea. Just on this point of the brokerage and what you guys do, could you sort of quickly let's imagine a scenario. We come to you with our business, and how does that process look like? And one question for me is there a minimum size of a business that you guys work with? But could you give us an idea of kind of how the process looks like if we were to come to you, for example?
Yeah. So to answer your second question first on minimum size, generally, yes. Generally, we'd like you to have a profit of at least 150 grand, but we will, and that's in pounds, dollars will do, to be honest, but we will look at smaller stuff if it's particularly interesting. For instance, maybe you have some specific intellectual property around the brand, or perhaps you're not actually looking for an exit, but you're looking for investment. To come back to the first part of your question, what's the process look like? We sign an NDA to protect you so that you have peace of mind that we can request read-only access to things like Xero, QuickBooks, ConnectBooks, Amazon Seller Central, Shopify, WooCommerce, whatever it might be. We take an indicative look at your numbers, and at the same time take a look at your brand, because generally speaking, we won't try and sell something that's not a brand, in the wider context of its niche, the industry. We'll look at your off Amazon and off website assets like your social media, your email lists. We'll look at what regulation is happening in your industry and the way the market is going. Putting all those things together, we'll come up with an indicative valuation. We believe your business is worth between A and B, and we'll have a conversation with you about that. And we'll say to some people, we believe your business is worth 2 million. And they'll say, didn't want to sell it for less than $1 million. And we say, you haven't got a snowball's chance of selling it for hang on, I just got my words completely.
Yeah,
I think you said 2
Tell them
million
their
and a
mi-
million.
we'll tell them their
Yeah.
business- we'll tell them their business is worth $1 million, and they'll say, I didn't want to sell it for less than 2 million.
Yeah, right.
And we'll say, you haven't got a snowball's chance in hell of selling it for 2 million because A, B, and C. Or we'll say, absolutely, you can sell it for 2 million. It's going to take you this long, and here are the things you need to go and do. Here's some homework. Go and do it. Or if the relationship is right, we might even mentor them on a route to an exit, kind of more holding their hand, keeping a constant track on what the business is worth. And when they're ready, and only when they're ready, we'll take it to market. We're all about the goals of the seller. What do they want? When do they want to sell it? How much do they want to sell it for? Is that realistic? It's not about flip your business with us in 30 days and have the money in your bank account. It's about carefully selling your business because there's no rush. Don't get me wrong. If somebody wants to move at a fair speed, we'll move at a fair speed, but we won't go so quickly that we get it wrong. We get it right. More haste, less speed. But the conversation might go where we believe your business is worth between A and B, and you say, fantastic, let's go, let's do it. So we will prepare your business for sale in terms of, we'll produce, for instance, a snazzy prospectus, which markets your business to a pool of buyers. And we've prepared that prospectus because we've sat down with you and asked you a lot of questions about your business to learn every single thing about it, and to understand what all the growth opportunities are and all the levers that a new buyer could pull to make it an attractive buy for them. And when I say take it to a pool of buyers, that means buyers that we already have a relationship with, and that does include aggregators, but also includes more mature private equity and family offices and private individuals. But also we'll cast a wide net to find other buyers that might be interested in the business. So that might mean going to our partner brokerages and digital investment banks, or it might be doing specific research in a certain industry. So for instance, if we're selling a particular type of business in industry A, we might find somebody with influence in that industry, say in an industry association for that particular sector, and get them to put feelers out in their network to find buyers in that space, usually competitors, for example. Because what we want to do is bring as many potential buyers to the table as possible, which will actually have almost like an auction effect to push the price up. What happens is we then get letters of intent from potential buyers. They come in pretty quick because buyers know that when we present them with a business on the desk of the right person at that organization, that it's a good business that's been through a process, the numbers have been audited by chartered accountants, et cetera, et cetera. So they're going to take a look quickly rather than Dave filling in a form on aggregator ABC's website. Very quickly, we'll get the letters of intent in, which are non-binding letters that say, we intend to buy your business for X. Please give us 30, 45 days exclusivity where you agree not to sell your business to somebody else, and we can do our due diligence. In the background, we've already had you doing your due diligence ahead of time so that everything is neat and tidy with a ribbon on top. And when we present it to the potential buyers, they are suitably impressed. We bring in the partner mergers and acquisition solicitors who we introduce you to. You can have your pick of several. And at the end of the due diligence process, usually in the UK, it's an SPA, which stands for share purchase agreement. But sometimes it's an APA, an asset purchase agreement, which is basically the difference between buying the brand and buying the company which owns the brand. Either way, the offer to purchase the business comes in, and it goes through the solicitors and us and the seller to skew that deal as much as possible in the favor of the seller. Very quickly, the deal is done within a few days, usually because when the lawyers are working together, going back and forth. It's in nobody's interest to drag these things out. And it's done. The first tranche of money is usually wired through an intermediary, sometimes a solicitor, sometimes us, usually the solicitor, and then to the seller. And champagne is uncorked.
Yeah, then it's party time.
Amazing.
Yeah. That'll hopefully be us and many of these viewers within a couple of years is the game plan, I think.
For sure.
Yeah, I think the smart way to make any money in e-commerce is to build a brand and sell it.
Yeah, agree. I mean, there's loads of that. I think the main takeaway from this is from my opinion, the takeaway is like do things properly from the start, build to exit from day one, and get all the structures in place and all the IP and the actual build a real business, as they say. But you've really got to do it, and you're going to be successful then and get a head of a good chance at an exit. I don't know. I think I've heard you mention before. We're not like the multiples seem to keep, you hear them getting bandied about, and like you said earlier, they might level out, but in reality, I think if you build a real business, it's always going to have value.
It's going to have value. There's going to be a buyer for it, and also things change, and where things will be when it's time to sell your business will be different than they are right now. And it's important not to get distracted by that. Just work on building a great brand that is sellable when you want it to be sellable, and don't get distracted by the noise that's going on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think as well, and not to blow smoke up your ass, Ben, but I think if somebody is looking to sell an Amazon brand, that's going to be the soundbite at the beginning of the the podcast. I think it's great that you've been through that experience, because like we've learned now, there's absolutely no way, hopefully in a couple of years when we're coming to sell our brands, there's so much complexity to getting everything sorted and getting everything done. And for us, it would be very important that we could work with somebody that's gone through that as an actual Amazon. So I think that's one of your unique, as a broker, that's a big selling point for you guys, right? Like, you've been through that experience, you know how it feels and everything else.
Yeah, Alex, you're right. I think that one of the things that has particularly attracted to the sellers that we've worked with in the past and that are working with now is the fact that we have experience on all sides of the equation. We're past sellers, we've had exits, we're accountants, we're mergers and acquisition specialists, and we're current e-commerce experts as well. And that puts us in a really great spot.
Nice, perfect. Cool. Ben, it's been amazing. Tom's getting beaten up in the co-working space, I guess now.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's going to reappear on screen in a minute, covered in blood.
Yeah, it's been amazing. I think we could sit here and pick your brains for absolutely hours, but we don't want to take too much of your time. But it's been super insightful for us personally, because obviously we're trying to follow that path that you've already gone down. And for me, it's music to my ears, man, because we're all about building real brands, and we're really trying to see Amazon as a sales channel that eventually we do want to diversify away from. So to hear you sort of reinforce that and say, oh, he's back.
I've been listening, don't worry. I was in transit.
So to hear you say that and to sort of reinforce that idea, and we have people coming to us, because we are documenting what we're doing. We have people coming to us for advice, and this is one of the things that we're trying to give. When you very first start off, a lot of people are just searching for that quick win, and we're trying to emphasize exactly what you're saying is, this is a real business. The opportunity there is to build a real brand, and you're going to do yourself a lot of favors if you view it in that way, with the view of having longevity and building something real that has actual value. So it's been amazing to hear you say that. And yeah, as I say, I could continue chatting to you for hours, but yeah.
Where can people find you, Ben, on the channel? Where can they reach out?
So personally, I'm on all the main social media channels. My handle's Ben Leonard Pro. I'm on LinkedIn. Just search Ben Leonard. I'm on Instagram, Twitter. Ecom Brokers is ecombrokers.co.uk. It's a UK domain, but we're working all over the world. And we're here to help. You can email me, ben@ecombrokers.co.uk.
Sweet. We'll leave links to that down below in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, it's been great to have you, Ben. So thanks again. Hope everyone enjoyed it. And yeah, I don't know, this one's going to be hard to beat, but we're going to try and get more guests on soon, and we'll see everyone soon.
Cool. Take it easy.
Cheers.
Cheers.